The words were a brand seared onto her soul. You're just too plain for high society. Jasper Quinn, her husband of a decade, had delivered the verdict with the same casual ease he used to order a new suit. 1 year later, Elle Porter, the plain wife, stood at the top of the Metropolitan's grand staircase. The flashbulbs were a blinding storm, but they weren't for her. They were for the man whose arm she held, Adrian Wells, the billionaire recluse. And across the marble expanse, Elle saw him. Jasper. His face was a mask of disbelief. This wasn't just an entrance, it was a reckoning. The click of the deadbolt felt too final, a sound as sterile and absolute as the penthouse Jasper Quinn was leaving her in. Elle Porter stood in the center of the vast, white living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes. They were not his boxes, they were hers. His things, the bespoke suits, the Art Deco sculptures, the Italian leather-bound and unread books were all staying. She was the only thing being removed. It's just optics, Elle. You have to understand. Jasper was fastening the cufflink on his left wrist, a shard of blue lapis. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window, which framed a perfect, indifferent New York skyline. Optics, Elle repeated. The word tasted like ash. For 10 years she had been his optics. She'd been the quiet, supportive, intelligent wife who organized his chaotic life, who hosted his stiff dinner parties, who corrected the grammar in his aggressive business proposals. She had been the solid mahogany desk to his flashy, gold-plated pen. Exactly. We're moving into a new sphere, he continued, finally turning. Jasper Quinn was a man built by a tailor. Everything about him was sharp, from the crease in his trousers to the predatory angle of his smile. The Mercer deal, the co-op board. These people don't just work. They exist on a different plane. And Nova Steel understands that world. She is that world. Nova Steel. The name had been a whisper in the society columns for months, a sleek, blonde shadow at Jasper's side at events Elle had suddenly been too tired to attend. So I'm being replaced, Ella said. It wasn't a question. Her voice was flat, hollow. The grief was so profound it had burned past tears and left only a cold, empty crater. Jasper sighed, a sound of patronizing impatience. He walked over to her, adjusting his tie. He was handsome, devastatingly so, and he knew it. It was his primary currency. Don't be so reductive, Elle. It's not a replacement. It's an evolution. He gestured around the room. This apartment, my company. I'm curating a brand, a life. And he paused, searching for the kindest way to deliver the cruelest blow. He reached out and brushed a piece of lint from her simple, beige cashmere sweater. It was her favorite, worn thin at the elbows. Ella, look at you. You're wonderful. You're smart. You're kind. But you're just too plain for high society. You're too sensible. Your heart is in your books, not on the page 6 list. And for where I'm going, that's a liability. Too plain. The words didn't just sting. They rewrote her entire history. Every night she'd spent researching his business rivals, every dinner she'd cooked when he was on the verge of collapse, every time she'd chosen a simple black dress so he could be the star. All of it was just plain. I see, she said. And she did. She saw the power imbalance she had ignored for a decade. He was the sun, and she was just a small, dull planet caught in his orbit, allowed to shine only by his reflected light. Now, he was blotting her out. I've been generous, he said, tapping his briefcase. The settlement is more than fair. You'll be comfortable. You can, I don't know, open that little bookshop you always wanted. He thought she was that small. A bookshop. Her degree was in art history and chemical conservation. She had, until she'd met him, been one of the most promising young art restorers in the country. She'd given it up to support his dream. "The papers are on the kitchen island with my lawyer's card," he said, moving toward the door. "My assistant has already arranged for your things to be moved to the new apartment in Brooklyn." He hadn't even let her choose it. He was curating her exit. He paused at the door, that perfect, chiseled jaw tight with, what? Not regret. Annoyance. Annoyance that this was taking up 20 minutes of his day. "Don't look at me like that, Ella. It's for the best. You are never happy in this world. You're just not built for it." The door clicked shut. Elle Porter stood alone in the white room for a long time. The silence was absolute. She looked down at her plain sweater. She looked at her sensible hands, hands that could detect a forgery with a single touch, hands that knew how to mix pigments to match a 17th century master. A new feeling, cold and sharp, began to creep into the crater of her grief. It wasn't sadness, it was rage, a quiet, precise, and deeply sensible rage. "We'll see," she whispered to the empty room. "We'll see who's built for what." She walked over to her boxes. She picked up a copy of The Odyssey, her old university copy, its pages soft as cloth. She had been Penelope, the dutiful wife, waiting. No more. It was time to be Athena. The Brooklyn apartment was fine. It was a pre-war 2-bedroom with good light and floors that creaked with character. It was also a world away from the silent, sterile penthouse on the 80th floor. Here she could hear sirens, the shouting of neighbors, the rumble of the F-train. It was the sound of life, and in the first 3 months, Ella hated it. Grief is a disorienting, physical thing. It was a weight in her chest, a fog in her brain. Jasper's words, too plain, had become her internal monologue. She'd look in the mirror and see only what he'd seen: mousy brown hair, eyes that were observant rather than sparkling, a wardrobe built for comfort, not conquest. She had become the woman he'd described. Her only tether was Finn Carter. Finn, her best friend from her post-grad days, owned a small, chaotic gallery in Bushwick. She arrived on Elle's doorstep 2 days after the move, armed with a bottle of industrial-strength tequila and a tactical-level lack of sympathy. "Okay, he's a sociopathic narcissist. We knew this," Finn said, kicking a box out of the way and planting herself on the floor. "The question is, what now? Are you going to let him win? Because right now, you letting that walking, bespoke-suited aneurysm win." "He already won, Finn. He has Nova Steel. He's on the cover of Manhattan Capital magazine. I'm here, with a creak in my floor." Finn poured 2 tumblers of tequila. "He won the battle, Elle. He got the plastic trophy. The war is about your soul, which, by the way, you were busy auctioning off for a decade to a man who thinks Rothko is a new brand of vodka." That one stung because it was true. "What do you want, Elle? Really? Before him?" Elle looked at her hands, still soft from disuse. "I wanted to work. I wanted to make things beautiful again. I wanted to save things." "Good," Finn said, pushing a glass into her hand. "Save yourself first. Then get back to work. I've got a lead for you. A small project. A collector. Very private. Needs a consultant to look at a few pieces before a private auction." For 6 months, Elle worked. She threw herself into the cocoon of her old passion. She set up a small studio in her spare bedroom. The acrid, familiar smell of solvents and linseed oil was a balm. She took small jobs, cleaning smoke damage off a 19th century landscape, relining a delicate canvas. She worked with a new, fierce, burning discipline. Every brushstroke was an act of defiance. Every chemical analysis that revealed a forgery was a small, sharp victory. She was rediscovering the woman she'd been, a woman of substance, of skill, a woman who was anything but plain. She rebuilt her life with the same precision she used on a painting. She started running along the East River, the cold air a shock to her system. She cut her hair into a sharp, intelligent-looking bob. She swapped her beige sweaters for dark, architectural pieces. She wasn't dressing for society. She was dressing for herself. She avoided the news, but the world wouldn't let her. Jasper and Nova were the city's new darlings. Their engagement party was a multi-page spread. Nova, dripping in diamonds, was everything Elle was not. Loud, blonde, and dazzlingly, dangerously sharp. Then the invitation came. A thick, cream-colored cardstock embossed with the seal of the Metropolitan Museum, the Metropolitan Benefactors Ball. Elle stared at it. It had been sent to her studio address. She was invited as Elle Porter, not Mrs. Jasper Quinn. It was a courtesy invitation, a low-level art professional ticket. She was supposed to be grateful. She was about to throw it away when Finn called. "Did you get the lead from that private collector?" Finn asked, all business. "What lead? I thought you were just being a friend." "Ella, I'm always your friend. But I'm also your agent, apparently. The private collector. The big one. He's been testing you with these small, anonymous jobs for the last 2 months. Elle's blood went cold. "What jobs? The Dutch miniature? The prelim analysis on the Soutine?" "Yep, he's been vetting you. And you passed, you brilliant idiot. He's impressed. He wants to meet you. His name is Adrian Wells." Elle dropped the invitation. Adrian Wells. The Adrian Wells, the tech billionaire who had disappeared from public view 5 years ago. The man who was rumored to have the most significant private art collection in the world. A man more powerful than 1,000 Jasper Quinns. He wants to meet me. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., his private storage facility. And Elle? Finn's voice was low and serious. "Wear your good boots, the ones that sound like you're coming to collect a debt." Elle looked at the invitation to the gala, then at her reflection in the dark window. The plain woman was gone. A restorer was looking back, and she was ready for her next project. The address wasn't a building. It was a fortress. A climate-controlled, anonymous concrete monolith in a part of Queens that taxis didn't like to go to. Elle Porter, wearing the black, ankle-high leather boots Finn had approved of, gave her name to a voice in a steel box. The massive windowless door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. The man waiting inside was not what she expected. He wasn't a tech bro in a hoodie or a withered, old-money scion. Adrian Wells was in his late 40s, tall, and possessed a stillness that was almost unnerving. He was dressed in a simple, dark grey Henleyan jeans, and he was standing in front of a painting that made Elle's heart stop. "A genuine Vermeer," Elle breathed, forgetting all protocol and walking straight toward it. "It's the lacemaker." "No," the man's voice, a quiet baritone, corrected her. "It's a copy. A very, very good one. From the studio of Han van Meegeren. But a copy nonetheless." Ella stopped, her eyes scanning the canvas. The craquelure was perfect, the pigments period accurate. But he was right. She could see it now, a subtle inconsistency in the way the light hit the subject's left hand, a chemical anachronism she could almost smell. "The cobalt blue," Elle said, pointing. "It's too uniform. It's 1940s synthetic, not 17th century lapis. It's beautiful, but it's a lie." She turned. Adrian Wells was watching her, not the painting. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Ms. Porter, it's a pleasure. You are the first expert I've had it in here who didn't tell me what I wanted to hear. Everyone else was too afraid to call my Vermeer a fake." "It's my job to see the truth," Elle said, her pulse finally steadying. "Even in a beautiful lie." "Yes," he said, his gaze intense. "I'm beginning to see that." He gestured for her to walk with him. They moved past rows and rows of crated masterpieces. A de Kooning leaned against a Caravaggio. It was, quite simply, the most extraordinary collection she had ever seen. "I've been observing your work for some time, Miss Porter. Your analyses are not just technically proficient. They're insightful. You don't just see the paint, you see the painter, the motive." "Thank you, Mr. Wells." "Call me Adrian. Mr. Wells was my father, and he was a thief." He stopped in front of a large, shrouded canvas. "I need you to look at something for me. My centerpiece." He pulled the sheet away. Ella gasped. It was a Jackson Pollock, but not one she recognized. A massive, swirling, chaotic drip painting that was vibrating with energy. "It's rumored to be his last," Adrian said. "The lost Pollock. I paid over $100 million for it, and I believe it's as fake as the Vermeer." Elle stepped closer. She spent an hour. She didn't talk. She looked. She touched the frame. She used a portable UV light. She took microscopic samples. Adrian Wells just stood, watching her, patient as a stone. Finally, she stood back. "It's real." He raised an eyebrow. "You're sure?" "Yes, it's not a lie. But it is a secret. Look here." She pointed to the bottom right corner, where the paint was thickest. "The chaos is the performance, but the signature, the real signature, is underneath." He painted this, then he painted over it with a different, angrier layer. The man who painted the top layer was drunk and full of rage. The man who painted the bottom layer was terrified. It's authentic, but it's not one painting. It's two. It's a confession. Adrian was silent for a full minute. "You've had a difficult year, Ms. Porter." The shift in topic was so sudden, it almost gave her whiplash. I'm not sure what you mean." "Jasper Quinn," he said. The name in this vault of masterpieces sounded cheap and ugly. A man who built a company on shaky debt and a curated Instagram feed. A man who wouldn't know a masterpiece from a motel room print. A man who, I believe, called you plain. Elle's blood ran cold. How do you know that?" "I make it my business to know things. I've seen you at fundraisers with him, years ago. You were always in the corner, looking at the art on the walls, not the people. You were the only person in the room who was actually looking. It intrigued me." He stepped closer. "Jasper Quinn is a fool. But he's also a problem. He's been trying to get his hands on a piece of land I own in the Hudson Yards, using questionable methods. He's working with Quinn Mercer, a man I particularly despise. They think they're sharks, but they're just minnows in a very, very big pond." "This has nothing to do with me," Ella said, her voice sharp. "I am not his wife. I am not his problem anymore." "Oh, I disagree," Adrian said, that quiet intensity back. "You're his solution. Or rather, mine." He picked up a thick, cream-colored envelope from a nearby table. It was identical to the one in her apartment. The benefactor's ball. "I am this year's benefactor," Adrian said. "I'm funding the new restoration wing, which means I am, unfortunately, the guest of honor. I hate these things." But Jasper Quinn will be there. He'll be at the head table with his new fiancée, Nova Steele, trying to prove to the world that he belongs. He will be performing. He held the invitation out to her. I don't need a date, Ms. Porter. I need a partner. I need someone by my side who knows the difference between a performance and the truth. Someone who can see the confession underneath the chaos. I need your eyes. You want to use me to get to Jasper, Ella said, her heart hammering. I want to hire you, he corrected, for a very high-profile consulting job. I want you to be my guest. I want you to stand next to me, look at the art, talk to the curators, and tell me what you see. And if in the process, the sight of you on my arm causes Jasper Quinn to lose his composure and make a very stupid business mistake, well, that's just a happy bonus. It was a power play. It was cold and it was calculating, and it was exactly what she needed. She was tired of being a victim. She was tired of being plain. What? Ella asked, her voice steady. Should I wear? The following week was a blur. Ella had assumed be my guest meant she'd be one of a crowd. Adrian Wells did not do crowds. A car arrived at her Brooklyn apartment, not a flashy limo, but a black, brutally efficient Audi. It took her to a private atelier in a brownstone on the Upper East Side. The designer was a severe, elderly Frenchwoman named Madame Beauvais, who looked at Elle as if she were a slab of marble to be chiseled. Monsieur Wells has specific tastes, the woman muttered, circling Ella. He does not like flash. He likes form, structure, intellect. He said you have good bones. We will see. There was no makeover montage. This was an arming. I'm not a prop, Elle found herself saying to the woman's reflection in the mirror. Of course not, chérie, Madame Beauvais said, pulling a bolt of fabric that looked less like silk and more like liquid shadow. Props are for the opera. This is for the war. You are not a date. You are a statement. The dress wasn't a princess gown. It was an act of architectural brilliance, a deep, almost black emerald green. The fabric was a heavy, matte silk that absorbed the light. It had a high, severe neckline, long sleeves, and a cut so precise it seemed to be sculpted rather than sewn. It was not a dress designed to be pretty. It was designed to be seen. It's magnificent, Elle whispered, seeing herself in the triple mirror. The woman looking back was not plain. She was formidable. It is correct, Madame Beauvais sniffed, adjusting a seam. The next day, a package arrived from Adrian. There was no note. Inside, on a bed of black velvet, was a necklace. It wasn't a spray of diamonds. It was a single, massive, teardrop-shaped Colombian emerald, the exact shade of her dress, suspended from a whisper-thin platinum chain. It was old, impossibly valuable, and cold to the touch. With it was a small, velvet-covered box. Ella opened it. It was a hearing aid-sized earpiece. She was in her studio, analyzing the last of the samples from the lost Pollock, when Adrian called. Not his assistant. Him. It's a communications device, he said, skipping any greeting. The Gala is loud, in every sense of the word. I'll be in your ear. You'll be in mine. We'll be able to communicate. A private channel. A private channel, Elle said, holding the tiny flesh-colored device. Mr. Wells, Adrian, what exactly is this? You called it a consulting job. This feels like espionage. There was a long pause. She could hear his quiet breathing. Ms. Porter, Elle, do you know why I'm a recluse? No. Because the world Jasper Quinn lives in, the world of optics and brand, is a lie. It's a cheap, flammable, dangerous lie. It's the copy of the Vermeer. And I have spent my life, my billions, in pursuit of the real thing, the authentic. You are authentic. You are one of the most authentic people I have ever met. Her throat tightened. Jasper and his new partner, Quinn Mercer, are trying to leverage their reputation to force a sale of a property that I have earmarked for a public foundation. They are, in short, trying to con the city. Tonight, at the Gala, they are announcing a new charitable fund. It's a shell company. They are going to use the Gala's prestige to legitimize it. And you want to stop them. I want to expose them. I want to show the world the difference between a real masterpiece and a very good fake. You are my expert analysis. When I introduce you, I will be introducing you as the new head of the Wells Foundation's Art Acquisition and Restoration Fund. Elle sat down. You're giving me a job? Tonight? I am announcing your new position, a position you have more than earned. The lost Pollock is real. Your analysis was correct, and you just saved me $100 million. This is your commission. Elle's mind was racing. This was not a date. This was not a revenge plot. This was a coronation. What do I have to do? Just be yourself. Be the woman who saw the truth in the Vermeer. Look at the people. Look at the art. And tell me what you see. When Jasper, or Nova, approaches you, and they will, I will be right there, in your ear. You will not be alone. The night of the Gala, Elle stood in her small Brooklyn apartment, fully dressed. The emerald rested against her collarbone, a cool, heavy weight. It was her armor. She looked in the mirror. The plain woman was a ghost. The sensible wife was a memory. The woman in the mirror was a queen, a restorer. A car horn honked gently outside. She touched the earpiece, hidden by her hair. I'm ready, she said, to no one, and to everyone. The steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art were a human river, a chaotic flood of silk, diamonds, and ambition. The air was electric with the pops of flashbulbs and the murmur of 1,000 conversations. Ella had been here before, trailing in Jasper's wake, a beige shadow clutching a program. Tonight, she was the storm. The Audi, which had no right to be there, pulled past the line of glittering Rolls-Royces and stopped directly at the foot of the red carpet. A security guard, seeing the car, moved to wave it on, then saw the discreet W logo on the windshield. He stiffened and personally opened the door. Adrian Wells stepped out. A hush fell over the press line. He was here, the recluse, the myth. He turned and offered his hand to the car. Ella placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and firm. She stepped out. The first reaction was confusion. The cameras, hungry for a starlet or a society heiress, paused. Who was this woman? She was not on their list. She was not a name. She was just beautiful. But not in the way they understood. Her beauty wasn't loud, it was resonant. The emerald dress, the severe hair, the single, staggering jewel. She was a piece of art, and she was with him. The first flashbulb popped, then another. Then it was a tidal wave. Mr. Wells, who is she? Adrian, a new partner. Adrian ignored them. He tucked her arm into his, leaned in, and his voice was a warm murmur in her ear, overlapping with the identical sound from the earpiece. Breathe, Elle. You're not walking into a party. You're walking into a gallery, and we are the main exhibit. They're staring, Elle murmured back, her eyes straight ahead. Let them. We're the only real thing here. They began their ascent. And then she saw him. Jasper Quinn and his new fiancée, Nova Steele, were 20 steps above them, preening for the cameras. Jasper was in a velvet tuxedo, the picture of smug success. Nova was a vision in white gold sequins, her blonde hair a halo, her hand on her hip. She was, Elle had to admit, breathtaking, a perfect, dazzling fake. A reporter shouted, "Jasper! Nova! How's the new fund?" Jasper was laughing, raising his hand when he saw the commotion below. He saw the phalanx of cameras swiveling away from him. He saw them focusing on the base of the stairs. He squinted, annoyed at having his moment stolen. Elle watched his face, a slow-motion study in disintegration. Annoyance. Who is stealing my spotlight? Confusion. Is that Adrian Wells? What's he doing here? Disbelief. And who is that Elle? His smile didn't just fade. It cracked. The blood drained from his face. His hand, the one he'd been waving, froze in mid-air. Nova, who missed nothing, saw his reaction. She followed his gaze. She didn't know Ella. She didn't need to. She saw the dress, the emerald, and the man. She saw the threat. Her smile tightened. Her eyes, as bright and hard as her diamonds, narrowed. "Darling," Nova murmured, her voice a stiletto. "Who is that?" Elle and Adrian continued to climb, a slow, deliberate pace. They were now level with Jasper and Nova, the four of them, frozen on the steps, a tableau of past, present, and a very dangerous future. The cameras went into a frenzy. Jasper was sputtering. He looked like a man who had been punched in the gut. "Ella," he said. His voice was a croak. "My God, You look plain," she thought. "Hello, Jasper," Elle said. Her voice was cool, clear, and carried perfectly in the sudden hush. She gave him a small, polite, devastatingly indifferent smile. "You remember my ex-husband, Jasper Quinn," she said to Adrian. Adrian looked at Jasper, not with anger, but with the mild, dismissive curiosity one might give a piece of broken furniture. "Quinn," he said, a single, sharp syllable of dismissal. He then turned to Ella, ignoring Jasper entirely, and offered his arm again. "The curators are waiting, Miss Porter." "Shall we?" "Of course, Mr. Wells," she replied. She didn't even look back as they swept past him, past the frozen, furious Nova, and into the grand hall. The power imbalance, so vast and unshakable in that white penthouse a year ago, had just been inverted. As the doors closed behind them, she heard Adrian's voice in her ear, laced with a dark, satisfied humor. "Checkmate," he said. "In one move." "The game's not over," Elle murmured, as the warmth of the gala washed over them. "Oh, I know," he replied. "This is just the opening." The great hall was a sea of glittering, judgmental faces. The theme was restoration, and the irony was so thick Elle could taste it. "The air in here," Elle murmured into her comm. "It smells like expensive perfume and quiet desperation." With a top note of "Who can I betray to get ahead?" Adrian's voice replied, a phantom in her ear. He was, at the same time, smiling at a passing senator. The whispers started immediately. "That's her? With him? I thought she was... well, you know." A terrifyingly thin woman with a face like a dried apple rushed up to them. "Adrian, darling, you came, and you brought a friend." "Eliza," Adrian said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "This is not my friend. This is Elle Porter, the new head of the Wells Foundation Restoration Fund. She's the foremost expert on pigment analysis in the country. She'll be overseeing the new museum wing." The woman's jaw surgically tightened, somehow managed to drop. Oh my. A working woman. How novel." "The future is novel, Eliza. You should try it." As they moved through the crowd, Elle felt a new, unfamiliar power. She was no longer Jasper's wife. She was Elle Porter, the expert. People who had looked through her for a decade were now desperately trying to catch her eye. They found their table. Table 1. Front and center. Jasper and Nova were at the same table. Of course they were. Jasper was already drinking, heavily. Nova was composed, but her eyes were flinty. She was rapidly reassessing the evening. "Ella," Jasper said, rising unsteadily as she and Adrian sat. This is quite the surprise. You never told me you knew Adrian Wells." "We never discussed my work, Jasper," Elle said, unfolding her napkin. "You found it plain, remember?" The shot landed. Jasper flinched as if she'd slapped him. Nova, ever the predator, saw her opening. She leaned across the table, her diamond earrings catching the light. "Well, I think it's marvelous. Reinvention. It's the currency of this city, isn't it?" Her smile was all teeth. "You must be so grateful to Adrian. He's known for picking up strays and turning them into whatever this is." The insult was precise, designed to reframe Elle as a pet, a project. Before Elle could respond, Adrian's voice was in her ear. "Don't take the bait. She's not the target. Look left. The man with Jasper. That's Quinn Mercer. The partner." Elle turned. Quinn Mercer was a thick-set man with a politician's smile and shark's eyes. He was whispering urgently to Jasper. "Elle," Adrian said, his public voice cutting in. He gestured to the floral centerpiece. "What do you think of the arrangement?" Elle understood. It was a prompt. "It's excessive," Elle said, looking at the explosion of orchids. "It's designed to hide the fact that the stems are rotting in the water. All flash, no foundation." She saw Quinn Mercer's head snap toward her. He'd heard. He knew she wasn't just talking about flowers. The dinner was a blur of polite, venomous conversation. Then Jasper, his face slick with sweat and entitlement, followed Ella as she went to the powder room. He grabbed her arm in the hallway, his grip surprisingly strong. "What is this?" he hissed, his eyes wild. "What are you doing? Is this some revenge? You're humiliating me." "Let go of my arm, Jasper," Ella said, her voice lethally quiet. "No, I want to know what you're playing at. You think you can just show up on his arm and what? Steal my life? Steal your life?" Elle laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Jasper, you gave me my life. You threw me away, remember? You told me I wasn't good enough. You told me I was plain. I was under pressure. I didn't mean not like that. You meant it exactly like that. You just never, in your wildest dreams, imagined that plain meant I had a brain, that I had a skill, that I was, in fact, so far out of your league you couldn't even see me." She ripped her arm from his grasp. "You are not my problem anymore, Jasper. You're just a bad investment, a forgery, and the art world has a way of dealing with forgeries." She left him standing in the hallway, his mouth open, his entire carefully curated world crumbling. She returned to the table. Nova was watching her, a look of cold, calculating assessment in her eyes. "Trouble in paradise?" Nova murmured, taking a sip of champagne. "Just taking out the trash," Elle said, sitting down. Nova held her gaze for a long moment. Then, slowly, she raised her glass. "To restoration, then." Elle's comm buzzed. "The auction is starting," Adrian's voice said. "Time for the main event." The main event of the gala was the auction, a chance for the city's wealthiest to prove their generosity, or more accurately, their net worth. The auctioneer, a man with a silver gavel and a voice like a foghorn, took the stage. "And now, ladies and gentlemen, for our centerpiece item." A painting was brought onto the stage. It was a small, luminous landscape by a minor Dutch master. It was, Ella knew, a beautiful, quiet, and profoundly important piece. Adrian had already told her, "I don't care about the war holes. I want that. It was stolen by the Nazis and just recovered." This, friends, is the view of Heemstede, recently restituted to the museum's collection. But tonight, we are auctioning off the sponsorship of its restoration. The winning bidder will have their family name attached to this masterpiece in perpetuity. A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't just a donation. This was legacy. "We will start the bidding," the auctioneer bellowed, "at $100,000. A paddle went up. "200,000, shouted a tech mogul. "250, from an old money heiress. Jasper, who had returned to the table, his face a toxic shade of red, was whispering furiously with Quinn Mercer. "The fund," Adrian's voice said in Elle's ear. "This is their move. They're going to buy the sponsorship with their new charitable fund to legitimize it." 300,000! Jasper's voice, too loud, too aggressive. He raised his paddle. "Jasper Quinn, for the Quinn Mercer Foundation." A smattering of polite applause. Adrian, sitting next to Ella, hadn't moved. He hadn't even picked up his paddle. 350, from the heiress. 400, snarled Jasper. 450. 500,000. Jasper was on his feet now, his velvet jacket pulling tight. He was bidding against the room, against his own insecurity. The heiress, seeing the wild look in his eye, gracefully bowed out. 500,000 going once, the auctioneer said. Going twice. Jasper was grinning, a sloppy, triumphant look. He'd won. He'd shown them. He'd shown her. "Hold on," a new voice cut through the room. It was Adrian Wells. He was standing up, but his paddle was still on the table. "I believe I am the underwriter for this event," Adrian said, his voice quiet but amplified by the microphone. "And I believe I have the right to amend the terms." The room went silent. "The painting," Adrian said, "is a masterpiece, and its restoration should not be handled by just anyone. It requires an expert." He turned and looked at Ella. "I will bid $1 million, Adrian said, "on one condition. The restoration and the plaque will not be sponsored by me. It will be credited to the woman who will personally oversee the work. I bid $1 million on behalf of Ms. L. Porter." It was a nuclear bomb. The room exploded in gasps. Elle's heart stopped. This wasn't the plan. Jasper's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He had been beaten, humiliated, and his ex-wife, his plain ex-wife, was the one holding the gavel. $1 million, the auctioneer stammered. Going, 1.5 million, Jasper screamed. The room gasped again. This was madness. Quinn Mercer grabbed Jasper's arm. "What are you doing? We don't have the liquidity." "Shut up," Jasper snarled, shaking him off. "I will not be beaten by her." Adrian looked at Ella. His face was calm, but his eyes were dancing. He gave her a subtle nod. Ella picked up Adrian's paddle. "Number 1. She stood up. The room, which had been buzzing, went dead silent. She was grace, she was form, she was the emerald green embodiment of power. "Mr. Wells," she said, her voice carrying across the entire hall, "has been generous, but he's a tech man. He thinks in zeros. A restorer thinks in value." She looked directly at Jasper, the broken man who had called her plain. "This piece," she said, "is not about the money. It's about the truth. It's about restoring what was lost." She held the paddle high. $2 million. It was her voice, her bid, her power. Jasper's face crumpled. He was done. He looked at Quinn Mercer, who was already on his phone, his face pale, the text messages, the margin calls. It was all over. Bidding on ego had exposed his entire paper-thin empire. $2 million, the auctioneer shouted, his voice cracking with glee. Sold to the magnificent Miss L. Porter. The room erupted in applause. Elle sat down, her hand shaking. Adrian leaned in, his real voice, not the earpiece. That, he said, was not the plan. It was a confession, Ella whispered, her heart hammering. Underneath the chaos, he smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. You're a terrifying woman, Miss Porter. I had a good teacher, she said. Across the table, Nova Steele watched them. She wasn't angry. She wasn't anything. She was just watching. She took a sip of her champagne. Then, very slowly, she pulled her chair back, stood up, and walked away from Jasper, who was now sitting alone, his head in his hands, a broken man at a table of victors. The fallout was not immediate, but it was total. The world that Jasper Quinn had built was a house of cards, and Elle's $2 million bid, a bid she'd made with Adrian's full financial backing, was the gust of wind that brought it all down. The next morning, the headlines weren't about the gala. They were about the winning bidder. The mystery mogul and his masterpiece, with a picture of Elle and Adrian, and more importantly, Jasper Quinn over-leveraged. Quinn Mercer fund stalls. Jasper's $1.5 million scream bid was an ego-fueled IOU he couldn't cash. It triggered a liquidity crisis. His investors, already nervous, saw the reports. They saw him lose a bidding war to his ex-wife. They saw weakness. Quinn Mercer, seeing the ship was sinking, did what sharks do. He fed. He initiated a hostile takeover, a move he'd been planning for months, using Jasper's Gala night meltdown as the breach of fiduciary duty he needed. 2 weeks later, Elle was in her Brooklyn studio, now the official, and much larger, headquarters of her expanding restoration business. Finn was managing the books, which had grown exponentially. The view of Heemstede was on a secure easel in the corner, her first and most important client. The buzzer rang. Finn went to get it. Ella, you need to see this, Finn said, her voice strange. Jasper Quinn was standing in the doorway. He was diminished. The bespoke suit was still there, but it was rumpled. His skin was grey. The predatory confidence was gone, replaced by a hollow, desperate exhaustion. They won't let me in my office, he said, his voice a rasp. Mercer. He locked me out. My own building. Jasper, what are you doing here? Elle asked. She was not angry. She was not triumphant. She felt nothing. A vast, clinical emptiness. You. This was you, he whispered, stepping into the studio. He looked around at the solvents, the canvases, the high-tech analysis equipment. All this. This is what you were doing. While you were with me, I was supporting you, Jasper. This is what I did after. No. He shook his head, the logic of his collapse finally clicking into place. Wells. He wanted the Hudson Yards property. He used you to destroy me. Adrian Wells never used me, Jasper, Elle said, turning to face him. He hired me. He paid me for my expertise. He gave me a seat at the table. You just wanted me to set it. He stared at her, the reality of her words hitting him. The woman in front of him was not the plain wife he'd discarded. She was a stranger, a CEO, a power. But why? He pleaded. It was the question of a child. Why? We were happy. Were we? Ella asked, and the sadness in her voice was real. Or was I just quiet? Was I good at being your plain little shadow so you could feel tall? Ella, please. He took a step toward her. I'm ruined. Mercer is taking everything. Nova left. She took the ring. She took the dog. A small, hysterical laugh bubbled in Elle's chest. Of course she did, Jasper. She's a high society woman. She's not built for plain poverty. Help me, he whispered. He actually reached for her hand. You're with Wells. You're on the museum board. You can talk to them. You can tell them it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. This was it. The final reckoning. The moment of his deepest betrayal. He hadn't come to apologize. He had come for one more thing. Elle looked at his hand, the manicured fingers, the lapis cufflink. A different one, but the same arrogance. She thought of the decades she'd spent, shrinking herself to fit into his life. She did not pull her hand away. She simply let his hang in the air, unanswered. I can't help you, Jasper. You won't. No, I can't. My plain little world, the one you discarded. It turns out it has rules. It has integrity. It has consequences. You don't restore something by lying about what it is. You built a life on a lie, and it just collapsed. That's not my fault. That's just gravity. He stared at her, his eyes hollow. The last flicker of hope died. He had nothing left to leverage. You are plain. He spat, his last pathetic venom. You're just plain cruel. No, Jasper, Ella said, turning back to her painting. I'm just done. Finn, show Mr. Quinn out. He didn't move. Finn, ever practical, put her hand on his chest. Let's go, buddy. The past is closed. He let himself be escorted out, a ghost leaving a world he no longer understood. Elle was left alone with the 17th century masterpiece. She picked up a fine hair brush, dipped it in a cleaning solvent, and with a surgeon's steady hand, she began the delicate, meticulous work of restoring the sky. 6 months later, the Porter Restoration and Analysis Gallery opened in Soho. It wasn't a gallery in the traditional sense. It was a working space, a high-tech lab, and a private consultancy, all hidden behind a discreet, sand-blasted glass door. The opening was the most exclusive and most understated event of the New York art season. Elle stood in the center of the main room, which currently held the view of Heemstede, on a central, perfectly lit wall. The plaque next to it read, Restoration by L. Porter. She wore a simple, cream-colored silk dress. Her hair was a little longer. She looked happy. Not triumphantly, aggressively happy, but settled. At peace. Adrian Wells was in the corner, talking to a curator from the Louvre. Their partnership had evolved. It was not a romance, not in the traditional sense. It was something rarer, a meeting of minds. He was her patron, her partner, and her most challenging client. He respected her intellect, and she was perhaps the only person in the world not afraid of him. You did it, he said, coming over to her, a rare, genuine smile on his face. He handed her a glass of champagne. We did it, she corrected. No, you. I just opened the door. You're the one who walked through it and rebuilt the entire house. He looked at the painting. It's perfect. The sky. It's like I can breathe it. It was always there, Elle said, just hidden under 100 years of grime. The bell on the door chimed. Finn, who was managing the door, looked up, and her eyes went wide. Elle turned. Nova Steele was standing in the doorway. She was not the Gala Nova. Her hair was pulled back. She wore a severe black pantsuit. She was, as always, stunning. But she was subdued. And she was alone. The room, filled with the quiet murmur of art world heavyweights, went silent. Nova walked directly to Ella, ignoring everyone else, including Adrian. She stopped in front of Ella. Miss Porter. Ella. Her voice was a low, steady alto. Nova. Ella was perfectly composed. Nova looked at the painting. then at Elle. "Jasper, I heard he's in Switzerland. Some clinic. He's not well." "I'm sorry to hear that," Ella said. And she was. "No, you're not," Nova said, with a flash of the old sharpness. "And you shouldn't be. He was a fool, a beautiful, charismatic, and profoundly stupid fool. I miscalculated. We all make bad investments," Ella said. Nova laughed, a genuine surprising sound. "So we do." She looked around the gallery, her sharp eyes taking in the technology, the clientele, the power. "I'm in a transitional phase," Nova said. "My assets were tied to his. I'm reinventing. Again. The currency of this city," Elle murmured, remembering. "Exactly. And I find myself in possession of a few pieces that my new patron is looking to liquidate. Quietly. A few minor impressionists, a Pissarro, a Sisley, all with complicated provenances." Elle felt Adrian stiffen beside her. He was about to step in to tell this woman to leave. Elle put a hand on his arm. "I've got this." She looked at Nova, the ultimate society woman, the perfect, beautiful fake. But fakes, Elle had learned, were just confessions, and Nova was confessing something. She was a survivor. "You're not here to sell art, Nova," Elle said. "You're here for a job." Nova's perfect mask cracked just for a second. A flicker of, was it fear? "Don't be ridiculous," Nova snapped. "Am I?" Ella said, taking a sip of her champagne. "You're the best flipper in New York. You know everyone. You know who's rising, who's falling. You know where the bodies are buried. You know where the art is buried. You're a walking, talking, perfectly dressed high society surveillance system." Nova was speechless. "My business," Elle continued, "is authenticity. But to know what's real, you have to be an expert in what's fake. And you, Nova, are the foremost expert I've ever met." She held out her hand. "I need a client manager, someone to handle the viper's nest, so I can stay in the lab. The commissions are substantial, but the loyalty has to be 100% to me." Nova stared at Elle's outstretched hand. This was the woman her ex-husband had discarded. The plain woman. This woman was now offering her redemption or a new, more interesting cage. Slowly, Nova Steele put her hand in Elle's. I'll need a better title than client manager." "We'll work on it," Ella smiled. "Finn, get Nova a glass of champagne, the good stuff." Adrian Wells watched the two women, a look of profound, stunned admiration on his face. Elle turned back to her party, the two most powerful and complicated women in the room flanking her. She was not plain. She was not a prop. She was not a victim. She was a restorer. And she was, finally, complete. Elle Porter's journey from a plain wife to a powerhouse in the art world wasn't just about revenge. It was about restoration. She didn't just rebuild her life. She revealed the masterpiece that was always hiding underneath the grime of other people's expectations. Her greatest victory wasn't destroying Jasper, but in building herself, finding an equal in Adrian, and even finding a complex new path with her old rival, Nova. She proved that plain can be a superpower, and that the most valuable thing you can own is your own authentic self. What did you think of Elle's incredible transformation? Was her final move with Nova a brilliant act of power or a dangerous alliance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story of betrayal, power, and ultimate redemption, please like, share, and subscribe for more.